Well, hey everybody, and welcome to Cleantech and Coffee, where we are today joined by Stefan Henningsson of WWF.
That's right.
Excellent.
Great to be here. Thank you for
Well,
inviting me.
thanks for coming. Good to have you here. You've been doing a lot within climate impact measurement, and that is one of the reasons why we're happy to have you here.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
We have as well, or we are starting now actually to measuring the impact of our companies, as I've told you.
Yeah. This is very exciting.
I think so too. So perhaps you could start by telling me a bit what you have done with these climate solvers and how you have measured their potential impact on the environment.
Yeah. We started the Climate Solver, an innovation program for innovation companies back in 2008 here in Sweden, and now since 2012 the program is running in China and India and South Africa as well, and also then now it covers the whole Nordic region, not only Sweden. So and as part of that, then looking for the best innovation, where we are also using innovation funnels with partners. So we tagging along with Nordic Cleantech Open in the Nordics now, for example, and then we're taking the best ones from there and we're calculating. So if this innovation is growing over the coming 10 years, realistically but very opportunistic growth, what could that bring in terms of reduced emission if they grow? These innovation growth. So connecting growth with reduced carbon emissions.
So you have basically then looked at the status quo and compared it to a parallel future where your solutions are implemented.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's what we're doing, and we're always looking 10 years ahead. And we have built up a tool now called the Climate Solver tool on this. So we also actually used it for the Swedish Energy Agency, so which has got one of the biggest cleantech innovation early stage portfolios in the whole of Northern Europe.
Yeah, sure.
So we looked into their 50 plus innovations and did the assessment also for them, and we found a cumulative assessment for their innovation portfolio, and that the potential there is like in the regions of 750 million tons. But that's if innovation grows and takes market share. It can be 10% market share, 20% market share, which is a lot for an early stage innovation.
Sure.
But we're saying it's the innovation that grows, not necessarily only that company, right? That's the way innovation is. So connected cars, for example, if you look into what digital will do for driving, so we drive more clever and eco driving. That's part of their portfolio, but it's also something we're seeing in other places,
in society,
right?
Of course.
So then you can think that maybe this would take a 10% market share, 20% market share in 10
some
years'
shape
time.
or form,
And then if it does that, how much will that reduce emission? The
exactly.
growth of digital in transportation. So that's the way we're reasoning. And
well, that's interesting. We have done it a little bit the other way around. Almost. We have looked historically. So we have looked at the past year of what our companies have installed, and then we look at what effect is that having potentially then on the markets. And then try to make actually calculations of the effect that it has had the last year.
Which is of course what we want to achieve as well, right? So I mean, when you did this, when you come out of this now as a stock market company, to my knowledge, it's the first stock market company that does this.
I think so too.
And in terms of what you have achieved in reporting both the avoided carbon emissions, but also the avoided water use. So we haven't done that yet, but this is the kind of direction we want to go as well. On what we it's called Climate Solver today. We're talking about One Planet innovation as something that WWF should embrace, since the challenges we have are of course much larger than carbon. Right? So that's really exciting.
I think so too.
I think it's really cool that you're bringing this out, and then in the future, the Nasdaq should bring this on as a way of I want to know as an investor in shares on Nasdaq through my investment how much avoided emissions will I have, how much avoided water use will I have, because this is the factor that will and have to drive the economy in the future in order for us to be able to deal with the challenges.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, our purpose is to have a positive impact on our ecosystems actually in Cleantech Invest, and to know if we are having that, we actually need to start measuring how our portfolio companies are doing in that aspect. We know they are Cleantech companies and we know they're having a positive impact, but how big is it? On which markets should they, for example, grow to have a maximized impact? One of our companies is targeting China for one of the reasons, of course, it makes good business sense because they're targeting the manufacturing industry, but also because the carbon emissions there are probably the biggest in the world. So that is why they are targeting that country specifically. So
and that is really interesting as well. We come out with something called the Global Cleantech Innovation Index that we have done a couple of times now, 2012 and 2014.
Yes, let's talk about that.
And we're just now working on the 2017 version, and I have a draft in my computer there. And basically what we've seen, not to reveal what's going to be in the next one, but
couldn't you reveal a little bit what's in the next one?
Maybe a little bit. But we've basically seen that the Nordic region relative to GDP, and which is where your companies are all from the Nordic region.
They're all from the Nordic region, basically.
Are very good at startup generation in this space. Very innovative cases coming out in cleantech, and both in terms of the teams around them, the technology, the level of technology, how good business models they have, but the domestic market is relatively small.
It is.
And you have a much bigger and stronger commercializers countries are China. I mean, they are not very good yet at the early stage compared to this region in the Nordics, but they are very, very good at commercializing. So if your companies from your portfolio is gaining market traction in China, well, they will grow an awful lot as a company, and also reduce much higher emissions, definitely. So it's a very, very good strategy in order to combine better growth and reducing emissions in a very dynamic market where a lot is happening right now. And
well, that's exactly how we
India.
see it. We, in reality, if you take Energize as an example, they cut emissions in manufacturing industry. If you would deploy them here in Sweden, we have basically hydro, wind, nuclear. The carbon effect is not that big. It might make business sense. But it makes a lot more carbon sense actually to do it in China. Not saying that they won't install here because it makes business sense here as well.
Yeah, sure.
But the environmental effect is simply so much bigger by doing it in some other country.
And the market is growing much faster.
Yeah, that's
so it's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
And there is also a challenge here in the business here to actually take these investments as well, because otherwise the big businesses here will also fall behind, right?
Sure.
So because many of these investments, like Energize, I don't know what the payback exactly is for that, but it's a
I can tell you that the payback when they install is actually typically less than a year for the customer.
That's what I thought.
So
I've heard something like that. So those are really, really good investments to take, right? So not only in China, but also in the Nordics and in other countries. And bringing those investments in reduces emissions. And also, just to be clear as well, what we are seeing through the calculations on Climate Solver, our positive calculations, and as well as for the Swedish Energy Agency, and we're doing a similar one for Intel now, the computer company, or the IoT company. And basically, efficiency gives much more bang for the buck in terms of carbon, quick carbon reductions. So Energize solution there, and that's very clear from the Energy Agency portfolio, that the ones in energy efficiency, they have a bigger positive climate impact quickly compared to the ones, for example, in renewable energy production, whilst we need better renewable energy production as well.
The megawatt tends to be the cheapest form of new energy, actually. Cutting a kilowatt hour tends to be better than producing a new one. Well, did you notice any challenges when you had done all these Climate Solver calculations and wanted to reach out to the market with it? How has it gone?
Well, the main challenge is that these are disruptive entrepreneurs, and when we do the Climate Solver, we award them. They should be commercialized. They should have a commercial offer, but they should be early stage commercial offers. So the main challenge is for these innovations to actually find the market. To get a first set of customers and actually spread and diffuse. So that's the main challenge in order for them to actually achieve,
of course,
those targets, the potential climate benefits that we're talking about, and to achieve the real climate benefits that you have now reported in your
and that will hopefully increase, of course, also for us. It's the first year we're doing. But did you notice any challenge of reaching out as well, or in the methodology?
In terms of methodology, I would say reaching out first. We can take Sweden as a case, because we also have a lot of work with big corporates.
I know you do.
We
You
have
most of the big multinationals you're working with these days, almost, right?
Maybe I wouldn't say most, but we have a couple of big initiatives. If you take the ones on climate change, we have something called science-based targets, which is a consortia of WWF, CDP, World Resources Institute, and UN Global Compact, which is pushing big corporates to set their reduction targets in line with what science says is necessary for 2 degrees global warming.
Exactly. So to curb their emissions all the way down there,
Yeah,
these are the targets they need to do.
Yes, and so this is should also be very attractive. Cleantech companies should know about who these 220 corporates are.
Because they need to cut their emissions.
Target. They need to cut their emissions. They committed to cut their emissions, so they will need solutions, right, to help them cut their emissions. So that's sort of creating a part of creating a market for corporates. But then we also have something called Climate Savers, which is similar to Solvers, but not the same, which is a group of a little bit more than 20 corporates, and they are setting targets for the whole value chain.
Exactly.
So they are also setting targets for their potential positive impact.
This is one H&M recently joined, I saw.
H&M just recently joined, and they set the target to be climate positive.
Exactly. Ambitious target.
Ambitious target, and they don't know exactly how to achieve it yet, but they're saying we must achieve this. Right, we must have a positive impact on climate change, just like you already reporting that you're having.
Well,
so there's a market there. But what I would also say is that
you're a busy guy.
What? Yeah, was my phone ringing? Yeah, I can just turn it off. And
it's a new climate saver company.
No, it's from someone from a government official from Sweden.
It was just the Statsminister calling.
No. Anyway, so so these companies, we also looked into the positive impact of some parts of their portfolios, right? Because a lot of corporates, they have a part of their portfolio
that is actually cutting emissions.
5-10% that is cutting emissions.
Sure.
So we've been part of them feeding in some of the findings from both these big corporates with portfolios, like SKF. They have a big ball-bearing company, multinational,
exactly.
and they have a portfolio called Beyond Zero, which is basically their clean tech portfolio, if you wish, which is helping their customers reduce emissions at scale. So we have some findings, but we've also fed into the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which is the protocol for reporting how all corporates should report on their emissions. Because we are basically saying that we're lacking a reporting standard globally for avoided emissions. So a solar energy company, for example, or a LED company, or the companies in your portfolio, they are according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, required to report how much is emitted from their products, but not how much is saved for using their products rather than another product. So, and that is and that's an area in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. It's called avoided emissions in what's called Scope 3 reporting, which is a term then for the value chain emissions. You have a one-pager on avoided emissions, and we've been part of listing some of our challenges there. And one of the challenges is the one, and maybe the biggest challenge is the one of, well, who's to claim that emission reduction?
Exactly. Is it the company doing it, or is it the company supplying the solution doing it?
That's
exactly.
Right. So then you have a double.
And you don't want to count it twice, maybe. If the both companies would be listed potentially, it would be a double.
No, but then again, if you don't have a solution coming in, would you be able to do it?
No, exactly.
So there is, of course, in reality, in the real business going on around the world, there is a real,
agree. I thought about that as well.
There's a real agreement that there's real trade going on and needs to go on in order for emissions to be shrunk. And so there's, but you need to find then a situation. Do you say 50-50?
Exactly.
Does one say, well, it's 50-50 is what the customer is can claim, but you can claim it's avoided emissions, or you can claim 50%. There can also be, of course, you have a lot of clean tech companies that are suppliers to a bigger solution provider.
Of course.
And then you can only take a part of. I mean, you do a blade for a wind power manufacturing plant, for example, and then of course the big company investors or who would be that is introducing that to the market, that actually selling it to the market. If they have an SKF ball bearing that makes it 30% more efficient, can they claim any of that reduction as a supplier to the real seller?
Yeah, that's a challenge. And let me just ask you, now that we're getting a little bit technical and into this, I'm kind of curious to see how you dealt with this, because if you're going to calculate the savings that a company is doing for a certain year, you're looking at the status quo of that industry. Next year, status quo of that industry might have changed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How are you dealing with that challenge if you're actually looking 10 years ahead?
Yeah, we are dealing with a challenge. We set a baseline, so we're comparing to that baseline, and that baseline we set according to some changes going to happen over 10 years. Right. So we don't set it like, oh, it's this bad now and it's just going to increase. Like if we have the average emissions from a car, for example, today will be a little bit less. In 10 years'
you
time.
calculate it with a certain improvement happening by itself almost in the industry, but then these companies will add to that.
Well, if you're Meshcraft and you're part of like a Norwegian startup that is part of making electrification of vehicles much easier for you as a driver in order to and the whole shift to electrification, you're coming down to much lower emission level, and then you're comparing to where you think that the business as usual is approaching. So you need to have that built into it, and this is also one of the challenges. Exactly what you say, but it's also in that avoided emissions part of a scope 3 paper.
Interesting. Well, we will need to look into more of this, because I did it now with 6 of our companies, and I took the ones where I found it, to be honest, fairly straightforward to do it. We have, for example, a company that's called Plug Surfing. It's a map for finding charging stations for electric vehicles, and of course they are a huge contributor to the whole electric vehicle industry taking off. But it's not so easy to calculate the actual carbon impact that they're having on an everyday basis.
I mean, the learning, the main learning of it is, in a way, is that you have to make some assumptions, and you should just be, open with what those assumptions are. But the thing is, and this is the interesting thing, and the very important I've been learning of this is we must continue to do this, because the thing is we need to shift the economy, and we need to shift the economy towards full decarbonization, and then we need these solutions to grow that can enable that. And I think, to a certain extent, I mean, we working a lot. We come up with something called a Living Planet report once every 2 years, that is, looking into the state of the planet, and we're in very serious situation with climate change, and we need to reduce emissions very fast. About halving emissions 2030 compared to where we are globally now in 2020. So we need to get these innovations out, and we need to be able to communicate that in an exciting way, because this halving of emissions is something that we need to see and address as an opportunity for the economy. And then if we cannot communicate that we need to grow these portfolios, we need to grow these businesses in order to achieve this, well, when they won't achieve it.
No, I agree. And I would go so far as to say actually that, and I love the work you're doing, because you are trying to push this out every year, and it's sort of a continuous effort to actually show this and show how it's actually becoming more and more innovations happening within this field, and it's a really positive effort. And I would go so far as to say that we would even need to try to redefine what it means to be a successful company. If you're not having a positive impact on the ecosystems you live in as a company, you may not actually be a successful company. So it should be that actually should be the criteria that we should sort of push as the first criteria of being a successful company. And only after that maybe are actually the returns generated into a successful company.
I completely agree that we need to push that, and I would also need to say that we need to redefine that when it comes to all sustainable development goals. Because we have these 17 sustainable development goals agreed, where climate change is one of them. And it's also one that if we don't achieve the one on climate change, then we will risk all the others not being achieved as well. So and they're interlinked. So yes, big corporates as well need to have a positive impact in this space going forward in order to achieve those sustainable development goals at large by 2030. and then we need to definitely start reporting on that positive impact. To come back to one of the experiences, just to in the sort of the challenges I'm gripping with, as you say, just keep feeding out these innovations.
Yeah.
We were part of a Sweden is just about to set the climate law, which is relatively speaking an ambitious climate law, net zero emissions 2045, and 70% reductions in the transport sector by 2030, for example, and so forth. But as part of a climate law discussion, we were also suggesting for Sweden to take this value chain perspective, where you also set reduction targets in your value chain as you do for a big business today.
Right, So also to your supply chain and so forth.
Also for your supply chain. So we because the carbon impact from a average Swede is like 11 tons CO2 per person in a year.
Right.
And that needs to also then, to meet the Paris agreed objective of staying well below 2 degrees, we need to go down then to, net zero emissions in the, in the next 30, 40 years in order to achieve it. So from 11 to 0. And politically that is taken seriously. We didn't get a target around that yet from politically in Sweden, but it's sort of acknowledged. And this represents like, then in terms of million tons of emissions, this represents like 100 million tons of CO2 emissions every year, if you include the import of goods to the Swedish emissions. But then if you look at this thing when we looked at the Swedish Energy Agency, for example, the potential of these innovations has said 700 million tons. So we have, but then again, that is very optimistic. But what if Sweden would set the target to 200 million tons of avoided emissions abroad through really top-notch cleantech innovation, internationalization, export, introducing to the Chinese markets, etc., etc., then that would have a positive impact that is also needed. And we just found politically that it sounds so much more attractive to me. It's taken a lot less seriously in terms of actually targeting this.
Right.
Because you're coming into a Minister of Industry innovation portfolio part that is not used to talk about it in these terms. They're used to tick a box. Is this better for the environment? Oh this is an environmental innovation. Tick.
It's a little bit messier, of course, maybe to think about, but in reality I think we are already exporting cuts in carbon emissions. Of course we are importing quite a lot through the things we consume, but we are also already exporting climate cutting solutions.
It's already happening, but that part of the equation, we need to have the value chain perspective of the supply chain for a business, which is basically what we import also to the country, and also the upstream, what do we actually give to our customers?
We need to lower the one and maximize the other.
Exactly.
Basically,
Exactly. And so we need to have a net positive, we need to have a very positive, there's a discussion around net positive. And I yes, every company should really today, in order to be seen as a leader, be net positive. And then the question is, how positive will they be? And if they're very positive in terms of mitigating carbon, they will also be very positive in getting the money.
That is the link. That really is. That's what we see when maximizing our companies' positive impact on the environment. We are really maximizing their commercial success. There really is no trade-off. So it's not like we're just out to do. Not that is a bad thing, but we're not only out to do good. We're also out to make money, and we actually see no conflict. So for us, it's a luxury. We have 15 companies where there is no trade-off. So
no, I mean in Paris, the whole world's countries agreed. We need to reduce emissions. We need to go to net zero emissions, and countries are trying to do that. And we just want them to do it much faster. But is it going to happen? Of course, it's going to happen. We need to do it. So it must happen. But
I would say this paradigm shift has happened. Now it's a question how the companies respond to it. Who gets the Like Patagonia is one example. Now we talked about H&M. Patagonia is an example where they're already trying to have this positive impact, trying to change their whole business. So some of these, and a lot more, of course, of the big corporates are also already on the train and are doing it. So I guess we need to lift those as well. Well, great discussion, Stefan. Well, do you have anything you want to ask me or any recommendations now that we are launching our first attempt, I would say, a very humble attempt at trying to do our own impact assessment of our companies?
Well, I think my question to you is to teach us about the water methodologies. I would like to get in contact with your the ones that you worked with in terms of
we measure the carbon piece. And the water the impact on reducing fresh water consumption as well.
As well, because that's also extremely important to reduce water consumption. We haven't got in our tool yet, but it's naturally something we should build in. So I'm really intrigued to learn the nitty-gritty about that. But then also, I think you're doing this. You're on Nasdaq now, and how can we think of getting this as an index to start with, maybe, or getting it out on Nasdaq? Because there are other, other climate solver companies are on Nasdaq now.
Quite a few
Solicon and Clean Motion.
There's quite a few. Siemens, PowerCell. There's a few of them on there.
There are a few of them on there, and what if we could build an ecosystem on Nasdaq, First North here in Stockholm is the biggest one for the Nordic region. To have a dialogue of taking this in there on as a way of looking at it from a. I mean, you have a portfolio, but you as a portfolio company in an even bigger portfolio on Nasdaq on this positive impact.
And I think that would be a great way to do it. And I think I know that a lot of smaller private individuals, but also bigger institutional funds are starting to look at this. Okay. But they don't have an easy way to actually track the environmental effect of some of their investments. So I think it would be appreciated. So let's take that to Nasdaq, and this is one of the ways to do it, of course.
Yes.
Nasdaq First North Sweden might be the first stock to produce a proper index of this sort, actually.
It definitely would be if
that would be innovative.
That would be very innovative, and it would be very much in line with the movement we're seeing right now. As you say, I mean, we see a complete shift also in the mindset from big businesses here. I mean, after Paris, we even hear some of our biggest sort of enemies before from the utilities and big steel industry companies coming out and saying we need to do zero carbon steel and
well, so do we. I couldn't agree more. It really is a shift in mindset that has happened.
Yes.
Among all these, it already has happened. I think that's important. Part of this is just the cost of sensors, bandwidth, processing power, solar, all these key technologies going down.
Of course. Yeah.
But then, of course, part of it is also just things happening now on a national level, on a regional level. It's just happening all over, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We end on that positive note. I think. Thank you very much, Stefan, for coming.
Thank you very much.
Let's keep talking about this.
Thank you.
That was a great discussion.